Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of Sound Bites. I'm really excited about our next guest. I'm actually excited slash terrified. If you guys are watching this podcast, you'll see why. On today's episode, we have Andrea Taber. She is a partner and head of accounts at 3Post. It's a creative studio based in Raleigh, North Carolina. She's also my twin sister, so super excited to have her on. I know everything I think there is to know, but maybe I'll be surprised today. I'm really excited to have you on. Andrea, welcome.
Hi, yeah, I'm excited to be here. Yes, I have all the dirt on Lauren. So if anyone wants to email me after this podcast, you can get all
Okay,
the
wow.
details.
Wow,
All the details.
we are starting really hot, really early, but please don't take her up on that because
Yeah.
I don't have much of a reputation to uphold, so maybe it's just get that out of the way now. But thanks for being on and thanks for joining us. I know Derek and I are super excited to have you. So really the first question is tell us a little bit about your background. Tell everybody else about your background and where you came from and how you got started.
Yeah, exactly. So, when it comes to marketing, I started off on the client side. Right out of college, I had my marketing degree and I was excited to kind of get that first office job. So, I decided to work on the client side. I worked in an internal marketing department at a home services company, HVAC company up in DC. So, I did that for a couple years. It was a really hands-on job. We were a small team of two. So I got to do a lot of stuff. I got to, get my hands dirty in a lot of different things. And that's honestly what I loved about it. And then after the DC rat race for a couple years, I was kind of just ready to get back to North Carolina and not be in traffic for hours of my life. And so I'd heard about some creative studios in Raleigh and applied for one, sold all my stuff in a matter of a month, and was living on Lauren's couch for about 6 months when I kind of made that transition over to the creative agency side. So I did that for a couple of years. And, what I really liked about it was that I always saw myself as someone who was creative adjacent, right? I'm not someone who has the technical skills or the kind of artistic skills as someone you would think of as being a creative, but I always just felt like I had a good eye and I liked being surrounded by creative people. And so that's what was really enticing about moving kind of away from the client side where typically you are seen as the creative, right? And then I always wanted to be surrounded by people who are a lot better than I was. And so that's kind of what was the pull toward working on the creative side. And so I did that for a couple of years. And I guess, at a larger agency, just out of necessity, you tend to be really siloed. You tend to, if you're on accounts, that's what you're doing. You're sending emails, you're, looking at timelines, you're kind of cracking the whip with creatives and, getting mad at them for not getting things done on time. And I liked that because, I got to kind of be around those creative folks. But what I really longed for was a lot of what I got at my first job, which was getting to do a lot of different things, having my hands in a lot of different projects and wearing multiple hats. And I just didn't feel like I was able to do that at the kind of larger agency that I was at. And so when I heard about, just through, I had a series of kind of connections at 3Post before I went over there. So when I heard about them, they were this small team of creatives who were putting out work that was just as good as the larger agency that I was at. And so, that was interesting to me. I'm like, how is this small team doing really great work? And how can I be part of it? So, I kind of just bothered them and pestered them to the point where they eventually just agreed to meet with me. And I convinced them that they needed an account person to kind of create some processes, create, a little bit of structure. The original owners of 3Post were two creatives who, hadn't heard of a timeline, didn't care about timesheets. Honestly, budgets weren't really a thing. They were just kind of guessing how much projects should cost. And I thought there was a need there. And so after about a year of hustling and just begging them to hire me, they eventually did. And, that was 8 years ago. So, just through this series of events, I eventually kind of rose to a leadership position there. And I like to say became kind of an accidental entrepreneur. Whereas, now I went from kind of being the lone account manager to now being a partner and kind of head of accountants over here at 3Post. And so that is my long-winded story. That is how I ended up at 3Post.
No, that's really awesome. That's really great. That's a really great background, really great transition. And again, like you're probably the person that maybe doesn't have Creative Cloud on their computer, but make sure everyone that's using that suite is getting the best products out to the customer and meeting their needs, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not the person kind of fiddling around in Premiere or anything like that. But I like to think that I add a little something just by making sure people have what they need, clients have what they need, the creatives on my team have what they need and are kind of ready to go for sure.
And I will say you're selling yourself short, so I get to talk you up, which is more
Thank you.
exciting than talking about myself. But you honestly do a lot of creative concepting for a lot of your clients, and you write a lot of script. You're a very strong writer, and so you get to your point, flex a lot of your muscles that you didn't get to at the smaller agency, even to this day, right? You're still a small shop. You work with huge clients because that's a testament to how skilled you guys are, but you are still like a working part owner of the business. So
Yes, yes. Well, and that's
And
again, that's what
developing
was
the
exciting.
strategic piece. Sorry.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
But that's what was exciting to me about kind of getting out of that larger agency and getting to three posts is that, I wanted to do more. I didn't just kind of want to be writing emails and looking at timelines. I still do a lot of that. Just, it's the nature of being in a small business. You have to wear a lot of hats, but I wanted to play a more important role. I feel like I did have kind of something to offer from, even though I don't see myself as a creative, I knew I had, a little bit of something to offer there from like a writing perspective or just from a strategy perspective, bringing a little bit of that to the table. Whereas, at a larger agency, they just don't really, they don't need someone like me to do that. Right. So here I could kind of create three posts, mold three posts into be something, whatever we wanted it to be. Whereas, at a larger agency, that's already set up. You're kind of just a cog in the wheel. And I wanted to be
you
a
don't
little
really
bit
get
more.
a say in like the culture development and like the
Mm.
Right.
business strategy side of things.
Yeah. Well, and that's something too. Like I remember like when I was at an agency, I'd write these emails and I was, very focused on like sounding like what I thought the clients wanted to hear. And now it's like, when a client works with three posts, I can kind of be authentically me. Because we are three posts, right? So we can have like the funny jokes, the terrible puns, the kind of like silliness, the human element that when you work for a larger agency, you don't get to kind of bring that out. And
I
that
mean,
was what was exciting.
they wouldn't be your client had they had a problem with that, right? They kind of know what they're getting on the job.
Yeah. We like to say we're the agency that you want to have a beer with at the end of the project, right? Like when clients work with us, they're doing things that are outside of what they normally do. And so we like to think of like working with us should be like a break. Like it should be the fun part of your job. You're creating a video, you're kind of stepping away from what you normally do to create something that is inherently fun, right? So we want it to feel that way when you work with us. We don't want it to feel stodgy and kind of like just uptight and boring. Like we want it to be a fun experience, and we want our clients to feel like not clients, but honestly like partners and hopefully eventually friends, which, that's happened with a number of our clients. We consider them friends. We've worked with them for almost 10 years. So
And the outcomes you get are so much better in that
yeah.
situation, right? Like I think a lot of agencies, a lot of creative partners, what they do is they'll end up focusing on what can I do just within the scope or within the bounds of this project, deliver that verbatim, push it aside, and then on to the next thing. But when you develop your relationships like that, what you all do is you build these strategies, you build these relationships, you really understand your end customer's business, and then you find ways to deliver even better, more creative solutions that really answer things even beyond the scope.
Oh, 100%. Our goal is always to build up enough trust with our partner. Whereas rather than, them saying, hey, we want a video, it needs to look like this. In fact, here's an example of exactly what we want it to look like. It's probably a whiteboard animation. Here's what we want you to create. But, our goal is for them to trust us enough to where they say, hey, here's the thing that we're trying to promote. Can you come up with a really cool idea for it? And they trust us to come up with a cool idea and run with that. Right. And so that's our end goal with our partners. It's not just to kind of like have them dictate ideas to us, but for them to trust us enough to come up with some really cool ideas for them.
So, in addition to all that, you call yourself sort of an accidental entrepreneur.
Yeah.
What about your background sort of maybe made that a more natural fit, or something that wasn't so accidental, or maybe something that felt more natural to you?
I think you mean our background,
I'm sorry.
actually.
No, I'm just the interviewer here. I'm just
Yes,
trying to
yes.
seem very impartial and third party.
Um, Yeah, you know what? And I know that the person that I'll be talking about will probably be listening to this. But we grew up like with a dad who was an entrepreneur. Like he started his own construction business when we were little kids, and so we grew up, watching him do that. I think he tried to kind of dip his toe into the corporate world, but he never really loved it as much as he did kind of running his own business, doing things on his terms. And so I grew up honestly thinking, I'll never be an entrepreneur. I don't want to do that. It's something I always fought internally. I saw the sacrifice, I saw the hard work, and I think the level of uncertainty that comes with being an entrepreneur was something that was always a little bit scary to me. And so I always thought it would be something that I would never do. I saw myself like going to an office, kind of like clocking in, and then, just having that typical job or career. But I think becoming an accidental entrepreneur is probably no accident at all, to be honest. I think that, having seen that my entire life, it was probably something that I was always going to do. So thanks, Dad. I did it because of you.
What's really funny is you talk about the uncertainty, right? Like entrepreneurship on the surface feels like there's uncertainty. It feels like it's like kind of walking without a safety net. Feels like you're losing that security. But when you really unpack it, really it just all that information becomes exposed to you. Where at your corporate job, you're insulated from it.
That's
right?
correct.
Like all of that risk and uncertainty is still there. You just don't get to see it, right? Your flashlight isn't pointed in the direction. You can't see the monsters. But when you're outside of that environment, all of that is exposed to you. But it just feels, in the beginning, it feels a lot scarier than it actually is until you get used to it.
That's right. No, that's totally right. Like when I kind of like think back about my, my time at, other places, I mean, those jobs could have ended at any point, right? You don't get to see it coming, right? You don't see it coming when you kind of work, when you don't work for yourself. Right now, like I know the trajectory of the repo, I know what's going on exactly. I know when we really need to kind of like step it up and make sure that we're doing new biz development and things like that. So it's actually more empowering, to kind of see what's coming and to know what's going on in your business,
and to be able to do something about it, right?
Right. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Like if you're just kind of like working, at an agency or working in the client side, like you don't know, your fate is in somebody else's hands. Whereas, there's a lot that's empowering about being an entrepreneur.
That's
for sure.
When you're playing video games as a kid, this might not resonate with too many people, but when you have like a younger sibling and you give them the remote that's not plugged in, and like it looks like they're playing and it looks like they're actually playing on the screen, but they're not really doing it. I feel like that's probably a good analogy there.
Did we ever do that, Lauren? Did we ever? We probably were.
I think our brother may have tricked us a few times playing Sonic. We thought we were. Yeah, we thought we were winning. We were not. We
weren't even involved.
Well, has anything surprised you about being a business owner and maybe something you didn't expect in a good and maybe a negative way?
Yeah, I mean, I think it surprised me how much I liked it. Like I again, like this is probably kind of similar to what we were just talking about, but I never thought I would like it. I never thought I would like the pressure that comes along with kind of running your own business. And now I honestly can't see myself like when I close my eyes and think about what it would be like to work at a company again. It's I don't know. It's just, I can't see myself kind of going back there. So I think that surprises me. I think, how much I enjoy it and how much, how rewarding it's really has been super surprising to me. Yeah.
I think one of the things recently that's surprising to me about it, all that stuff, but how hard it is to actually hire somebody. Like when you have to go through like the state, like not just like the recruiting aspect of it, but like all of the legal red tape that you have to go through to hire somebody. That blows me away, but unrelated.
I also think like your first hire is always hard. And that's something that like our first full-time hire, we work with a lot of folks from on a contract perspective, but like what is our first real hire and how are we going to make that impact? I know, Andrea, we struggle with this. Like, do we have the time to train these people? Like, do I have the bandwidth to even bring somebody in, which is so short-sighted, but it's a real thing when you're just like, I'm barely sleeping now, and now I have to train somebody.
I think what I struggle with when I think about like bringing on someone else is honestly my own expectations for that person is kind of, wanting to find someone who wants to work as hard as I do, who cares as much about 3Post as I do, finding someone who's willing to do all the different things that I did, when I kind of came onto 3Post and that I do now. And, just understanding that no one will love three post as much as I do and as much as Michael does. And just understanding that I can't expect that of them. And maybe that, maybe that person does. So it's like really my own expectations of what I want are things that I kind of struggle with there. But you're right to like the bandwidth of bringing on someone new and integrating them into the culture and making sure they're a good fit, because when you're a company of our size, you know, it's that first hire is so important, and making sure that it's a good fit is so important that you feel like if you pick the wrong person, it's kind of catastrophic. So yeah, I think that's something we think about a lot.
Really, you got a couple options, right? Like when we talk about this a lot, you can hire somebody that's almost a clone of you so they can offload some of your stuff, or it's
Lauren,
like,
are you looking for a job? Speaking of,
we do partner on a lot of stuff together, so it's kind of like halfway there already.
But that's one way to get capacity, right? Like you can try and find someone that has similar skill sets to you, so you can copy paste and keep running. And then the other one is like find somebody that does one of the things you do just really, really well, and let that person just crush those tasks. And it's always that fine balance of what direction do you go depending on what the needs are. And back to your point of like abstracting uncertainty, it's like at any point, if one project, two projects, three projects dry up, how do you keep that person going? How do you keep that person's funnel fill? It's a lot getting that keeps you up at night.
I'm sweating thinking about this. I don't know. Give me anxiety a little bit.
We're just anxiety raising, going through the roof. Well, I want to switch gears a little bit and ask about, you know, the types of content that you produce and the types of clients that you work with. Like you work with pretty large tech companies. That's one big, you know, vertical for y'all. What sort of things are they expecting from a video perspective, and how has that changed over time?
Yeah. So, you know, we're a full service creative studio. So that means that we're doing everything from coming up with concepts to, you know, shooting if it's live action, or, you know, kind of doing the middle part in there for animation, and then fully executing these pieces. And so we take projects from beginning to end. You know, we do work with, you know, a lot of, you know, just kind of based on where we are here in Raleigh, Durham Triangle Park. You know, we work with a lot of those companies. We work with the Toshibas, we work with Lenovo, Red Hat, all those fun folks. And so I think that, you know, what's expected really depends on the client. And I think that because we're a smaller boutique agency, we can really create those unique experiences for our client and based on that project, right? So, but I think in general, what a client is looking for when they come to us is that they're able to kind of give us, you know, their needs, their wants, what they're looking to kind of get out of this video, and understanding that we're going to be able to come up with a concept that helps them achieve those goals, helps them kind of like get to the client to do that next step. I don't know if that really answered what you guys were asking as far as expectations.
I think it does. I'm also super curious. Like you've been with 3Post for 8 years. Like, is the content that you're creating now different, you know, from what you were working on back then? And maybe how has that evolved over time?
I mean, certainly, you know, like we work in a creative, you know, field where things are changing all the time. Styles are changing all the time. What's popular is changing all the time. I would say, you know, when I first came to 3Post, we were probably 80% live action footage. So, you know, going out on shoots with our cameras and then, you know, doing, you know, video edits, and probably 20% animation, right? So we weren't doing a ton of like these 2D, 3D animations. Whereas, you know, thanks to COVID, you know, that was a big push. But also just in recent years, like animation has really taken a lot bigger chunk of our business. So we're doing a lot more of those 2D, 3D animations right now. And I would say, you know, the quality of our work has changed a lot. You know, we've all gotten better. And so we make that like a really big focus for us, where we're always kind of like seeking out like what's popular, what's trendy, what are some trends in animation, how are things being shot, always trying to grow and make sure that, you know, when people come to 3Post, yes, we're not the biggest team, but they're going to get high quality work that doesn't cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars, unless you have that budget, and we will gladly take that money. But, you know, I think that because we can keep our overhead low, because we're a small team and because we all do a lot, we're able to give folks really high quality pieces without kind of like these astronomical budgets.
Yeah, being lean and being able to rapidly make impactful things that are strategic is really important. And like over the last 8 years, you think about it, the expectation of quality has kind of gone bimodal, right? Like on one end,
That's right.
like production value has been way higher, even stuff like you just put on YouTube, like really high production value. And on the other side,
Mm,
you have like the user generated content look and feel. I know
yes.
y'all have done a lot of that kind of activity, which is really, really engaging too, right? But like everything in that middle space kind of gets
Yeah.
lost now. It's either got to be like super, super high end, or it has to be user
Mhm.
generated almost, or have that feel.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that's what's, I kind of like that. I like
Mm.
that, it's not all kind of like broadcast TV pieces, and it's not all these kind of like, YouTube style pieces. I like that there's variety in there. I think it keeps us sharp. It keeps us, kind of on top of our game as far as like trying to anticipate what's popular, what clients needs. And, I think again, because we're small, because we're nimble, we can adapt to client needs and different production levels for different budgets. So I like that.
Well, how do you combat people who they all have
Oh,
an iPhone? We work with a lot of clients. They're like, this is HD right here. So
yeah,
why don't you just like put this on a tripod and shoot? Or why
yeah.
don't I just do it? How do you, really articulate your value prop at a time where everyone thinks they're a photographer, everyone thinks they can shoot video, and they're all directors now.
Yeah, that's always a challenge, right? I mean, people see these commercials that say "shot on an iPhone," and then kind of like what they don't see. Whereas if they just kind of like looked behind, it's this huge rig that that this iPhone is on, and it's all the additional equipment that was required in order to make that shot look good. They see the lighting from the gaffer, you see the
Mhm.
jib that it was on, right? And so it's really difficult. I think that we would try to do, and what we do in the situation where this comes up, is really sell the value of working with us, not just because we can hold a camera better than they can, but that when they work with us, they're getting a great concept, they're getting a strong crew, folks that we've worked with for a really long time, and we're able to kind of give more value to them just because they're working with us, right? Like, and I also invite them to try to shoot it on an iPhone and see how difficult it really is, because it's not really the camera that makes a video great. It's how it's shot. It's the planning that went into it. It's all the pre-production, all the kind of details that clients don't have the time to kind of really invest in that. So
And
I say give it a
storytelling's an
whirl. Let me
art.
know. Yes, exactly. It
So
really
like even if
is.
they have the right tools, like you can put the right tools in anyone's hands, and being able to actually tell an effective story that's going to get the message across and get the outcome, like it's hard. It's really, really hard.
I mean, y'all could give me like a spatula and a pan, and I still can't cook anything. So just to really circle back to, I just have
Yeah.
one skill set, and that's doing this
That's not
podcast and
true.
sending
Again,
notes.
you're being too hard on yourself. So I need to go ahead and let everyone know that Lauren can cook at least an egg with a spatula and a pan.
That's right. I have advanced to the egg stage.
Cooking an egg is
Correct.
actually difficult,
It
depending on
is.
method.
That's right.
You guys, well,
According
I've
to
really
Top Chef.
scrambled this combo. So
Yeah.
let me
Derailed.
We're just
sorry.
beating a dead horse now.
So, Andrea, do you have the same love of puns as your sister?
I do, and I honestly think that that's an inherited trait from our dad. We're spitting that pun game when we're all together in a room. We're pretty insufferable. So,
Yeah,
I
you
believe
don't know
don't
that
want to be
anyone wants
around our
to.
table at Thanksgiving. You do not want to
Yeah,
be
no
there.
one wants to be at the Taber table.
So that randomly reminds me. Did you end up receiving the business end of the wrath of the missing Tushkin?
I did. I was accused of stealing the Tushkin. But
This is
where's
such a long
mine?
story. I don't even know how
Mine is
to.
different. We might have to cut this because there's like 5
Yeah,
people in this whole world that cares
Yeah.
about the Tushkin
we'll
or
leave it in
knows
as an
what a
Easter egg.
Tushkin is.
It's toward the back of the podcast. It's fun.
Yeah, Liz Clark, a former guest, she might know what the Tushkin is.
That's about it on
Yeah,
this
it's
list.
very specific. Like even a Google search, it won't pull it up. Like I attempted, I tried. Just don't. It's definitely a very regional thing for y'all. So,
I invite people to research and then again reach out. Lauren wrote a titillating story about it in the newspaper, our high school newspaper that we were co-editors in chiefs on.
so to rapidly bring this back, when your ideal projects, you guys do a lot
Yes,
of really interesting work across a lot of interesting projects. What are your ideal ones? What are the ones when you really deliver them? You're like, man, that was awesome. We had a lot of fun with that beginning to end.
You know what? I was just thinking about this. We just worked on one with it was about a year ago. It feels like it was not that long ago, but it was for one of our longtime clients, Cree Lighting, one that you guys might know pretty
Pretty well.
well. And
Mhm.
it was for one of their light fixtures. And, what we ended up doing was creating this really fun scripted piece where we personified a light fixture and created this whole kind of like, if you think about cars, from Pixar. It had that whole kind of like vibe to it. And what I loved about it was, we worked with this client for a really long time. We've worked with Cree for almost 10 years. They were one of our first clients. And what I loved about it is they said, hey, we have this new product. What's something that we can do with it? And that's all they gave us. And we came up with this really zany, out of the box, just crazy idea. And they said, we love it, run with it. And they let us really they took a chance on us and they let us, execute something that maybe a lot of my clients wouldn't really give us the runway to do. And it turned out so great. It's one of the pieces that I'm most proud of. And it's just something really different and really unique. And they let us take it from beginning to end. And so that's my favorite kind of project, where a client trusts us to do something that maybe isn't the most straightforward.
Hmm.
Those always end up being the best, in my opinion.
And we'll link
Yeah.
to that video just so everyone can
Yeah.
see, because it's one of my
Oh my
favorites too.
gosh, thank you. Yes, it was so much fun. Talking light fixtures. I mean, come on. I didn't think I'd ever get to make that video. And it was so much fun. And that's the kind of and I think what was the most rewarding about that was that, we built up that trust with Cree, that they believed in us and they trusted us to do something really different. And that just
Yeah.
feels so good. That is the most rewarding thing. And I mean, the number of clicks and then, how well it did for them is certainly rewarding, but just knowing that they trusted us to do something really different, it feels really good.
Yeah, like a client you probably didn't. This is a John Madden statement, but a client you didn't have that trust built up. You throw that idea out, and they might be like, I don't think so. This is the template."
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's like
But,
anything, right? You kind of have to build that trust and maybe do some of the projects, maybe surprise them
Mhm.
with some projects that you weren't so excited about to really
Yeah,
get that
Yeah.
equity there to do something
Oh,
great.
yeah. And usually when we start with clients, it's like we don't, we don't have that equity, we don't have that trust there. And so that's where kind of my role is really important in as far as client services is, you know, creating that rapport, creating that trust, getting them to feel really good about working with us, and then obviously delivering a really high end product at the end of the project. So that when they come back to us next time, maybe they give us just a little bit more leeway. Maybe they let us take a little bit more of a chance, with the style. And that's been the trajectory for a lot of our clients that we've worked with for several years. And they come to us and they say, "Hey, what does Three Post think?" Great. Let's come up
yeah.
with some cool stuff.
I think that's great. And I think another thing that's been interesting is, besides making great quality products with really great strategic vision behind them, I think now more than ever, especially like from like 2020 till now, being data driven in this area is becoming more and more and more and more important. Just the
Yes.
creative concept, having a great idea and executing it is one thing, but I think people are just demanding the outcome, the results. And with that same client, I think one of the pieces of content you did continues to deliver ROI for them, right? It's like how-to series that you did.
I know what
And
you're
so they
saying.
see the production value versus the delivery. And it's like that
Mhm.
kind of thing will get you even more equity to get more projects and do more things outside the lines, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and when I look forward to what I want Three Post to be, kind of in this new data-driven era, it is really, we want to be an agency that puts a lot of emphasis on data. I think that, again, when Three Post started, it was two creatives who just that wasn't even in the realm of possibility as far as like having metrics or collecting data and making creative decisions based on that. And where I really want to see us going is becoming an agency that is really integrated with their clients from a data perspective, so that we're not just creating videos that we hope someone will watch. Like, what is the point of creating a video that just kind of goes to YouTube or Facebook purgatory and lives there forever and no one sees it?
Mhm.
So I think that when we think about like where we want to take Three Posts, it's that we're creating great content, cool creative content that is backed by data, so that people will watch it, people will click on it, not just because I want Three Posts to be awesome and get that notoriety, but if we're not creating results for our clients, like, why would they hire us, right? People want those tangible results. And that's going to be really important for us moving forward. And
When
I
you did all
think,
the brand ID for, you worked on a project with Scatter, right? You did all their
yeah,
visual ID and brand ID, and that ended up being data driven as well. Like you guys spent
yeah,
a lot of time focusing on who's the persona type, who are we trying to resonate with, what color palette is here, what fonts to use, and like all that data driven approach really delivered massive results. Like when we ended up testing that out, like ripped the skin
yeah.
off the ball. Like not a single person even was like, it's fine. It was like everybody loved it, which was
So
great.
fantastic.
And I also, coming from the client side, I think when you said something that was really interesting, it's like, well, why would we even make content if it's not going to work for our clients? But I've
Mhm.
certainly worked with agencies from larger, that are larger. They create content because they want to win awards. It's not really
Right.
kind of like Mad Men days. It's not really because they care about the metrics of the clients. Like they just want something that looks really cool in their portfolio they can put on their website and get an Addy for, they'll win an Addy. And like for me, as somebody who worked at companies who were really large, but had to be very data driven because they were run by engineers who, they lived in spreadsheets and cared about numbers, that wasn't going to fly, especially
Mhm.
when like the last company I worked with, it was an e-commerce business. We needed to show some level of return on that ad spend. And
Mhm.
so working with a lot larger company or agencies, I had to say like, I need to see some sort of data. I need to understand like that we're tracking this to see if it's successful. And having to push them was always a challenge and not something I always had the bandwidth for. So it's great to
Mhm.
know that you have that mindset going into like, hey, we need to make sure that you're making money off of this because if you're not making money, we won't be making money.
Mhm.
Like it's all very dependent on one another.
We were
Totally.
talking
And
with
oh, go ahead.
no, go for it. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that in our space, those awards become like very coveted, whereas I could never win another award. And I mean, I don't even know the last time we like submitted ourselves to win an award because it's so not important to me. Like the most rewarding thing that, I get at the end of a project is a client saying, we got X amount of leads, or we had so many people reach out to us and say they love that video, right?
Mhm.
That's the reward. I mean, and, in our business, it's like, yes, like you can be creating cool things, you can be creating like art, but at the end of the day I want it to be art that serves the goals of the client, of the partner. I mean, it means nothing if that's not being achieved. Nothing.
And I think the mood is shifting in that direction. We were talking with Jenna
Yeah.
from Ford, and it's like, 10 years ago, it was like if you could win a Cannes Lion, like you were crushing it. You were going to be on the cover of Ad
Yeah.
Week, and it was awesome. That was the pinnacle. Now, like those might be beautiful, might be creative and clever, but if they don't convert with the end target market, you vaporized a lot of money. So
Yeah.
it's like, how can you make experiences that actually convert based on that investment you're making? And lean agencies are going to be winning this battle versus
100%.
larger, slower ones that are trying to get awards.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, that's definitely where we want to go. I think that there are some challenges kind of in that though, as far as like the clients that we work with, like when we partner with larger agency or larger companies on projects, a lot of times they have that internal team that is kind of that has all that data and has all those metrics that maybe they don't always really want to share with us as far as, to help us kind of like make those decisions, right? Like that's something that we struggle with a lot is, those internal teams, they have all the data, but maybe they don't want to share it, or maybe they don't know how to
Mhm.
distill it down in a way that we can actually use. And so kind of working with those internal teams can be a challenge. And then, when I think about working with smaller companies who are very hungry to create content, but maybe have a limited budget, they don't really want to take any of that budget and put it toward, doing the work to figure out what's going to actually work for them from a data perspective. They don't want to do the audits. They don't want to do
Mhm.
any of that. They don't want to take any money out of the video creation budget to do those things. And so those are things that we are kind of constantly trying to navigate
Sure.
as we move into that whole data driven perspective or vibe.
So on that note, what do you think the next 5 years look like?
Mm.
What is the future of this industry, the future of content creation, the future of marketing strategy? What does that look like for you?
I think for us, we're really lucky in that, people are wanting video more and more. And so while I don't know that I have my finger on the pulse of like, specifics as far as like what exactly the industry is going to look like, what I know is that people are wanting video. People are watching videos more and more. People are reading less, which as a bookworm, that makes me very sad. Like I'm sad that people aren't reading. But as someone who runs a creative studio, I love it. I love that video has has become kind of this main form of communication for companies. And so I know that the demand is there. And, when I think about how 3Post is going to be in 5 years, I think that as long as we kind of grab onto that opportunity and lead with, being the creative studio that isn't just kind of creating pretty things, but is creating pretty things with, some stats in mind and some data behind us, I think that, the possibilities are kind of endless.
Creating meaningful things is probably the most
Right.
important takeaway
Meaningful
there.
I was gonna say, Derek, because I think like when there is such a demand for it, I think AI, machine learning, all that stuff, it's like ripe for some sort of like intervention there, some sort of tool or whatever that's going to make it easier for, maybe computers to make videos or something, right?
Oh,
I hope not.
there's a few platforms. No, there's a few platforms that are helping some of the production process, but for things like TikTok, for rapid, quick user-generated
Right.
content, I think to tell like a really good, like we talked about earlier, even with the right tools, if you don't know how to build a strategy, think about what your outcome is, and build a cohesive storyline that really is engaging, you're going to struggle. And you look at how engaging video is right now. Like that's why YouTube does so well. Instagram has shifted their whole platform to be focused really on video. Like TikTok taking over the world, it's a video platform, and companies need to meet all these people where they are, and it's consuming really engaging video content.
I think that's right. And I think what we're trying to say is that nanaochomp and 3Post will be forming a super company. And yes, we will be taking over the world.
We were talking with your friend, was it yesterday? We were talking to your friend Adam, and he has the Avengers initiative, right? He wants to get all the different groups together. And, I'm kind of I feel bad that I didn't come up with that, but we were calling it like Voltron. You get all the right pieces come together. But that's just dating myself, right? That's just a little bit, a couple of years. Yeah.
We're much younger than Derek, so we don't know what he's talking about.
But I think that makes sense.
Oh,
sorry. Go ahead, Derek. I was going to do an amazing transition, but
okay, I'm ready for it.
I completely interrupted it. We'll jump cut this so it comes out great.
Okay, perfect.
I was going to say, speaking of younger, we like to ask this question to everybody who we, subject to being on the podcast. If you could have dinner with the 18-year-old version or 25-year-old version, both of which I know very well, what would you say to that person?
Maybe let's do my answer and your answer, what you would say to me.
Oh my gosh. What would you say? What advice would you give?
I did think about this one. I think that what I would say to both the 18 and 25 version and current version of me, I think just, to be patient. I think that when I was at both of those ages, and something that I still struggle with to this day, is kind of living in the moment. I think that I really struggle with, always kind of like looking forward, wanting to get to that next step very quickly, kind of hurrying through life. I think that's something that I've been challenged with my entire life. When I was in high school, I couldn't wait to get to college. When I was in college, couldn't wait to get into the real world. And even now, I'm always kind of like looking to see what's next rather than maybe like enjoying the moment. And I think that there's a chance that I miss some really good things when I'm like that. So I'm always working on being present and being patient, I think is what I would tell myself then and now. Lauren, what would you tell me? You knew me.
I was going to say, I think Derek would tell me both of those things now. So that's maybe we're more twins than we give ourselves credit for. I would say patience. And also I think you were like a very serious student and very serious employee. So maybe allowing yourself to have a little more fun and know that you're going to do great and be really successful and not put so much pressure on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Oh, great advice. I should take that.
Yeah. It's such a weird thing. Like when you're 25, you just think, I have to focus. I have to do all this work. I have to do heads down. I have to be always available. And you get so burned out. And then to your point, you miss just so much. Like I remember times where I'd be in places that I absolutely shouldn't be working. And I was on a phone trying to solve a problem from, the other side of the world doing something. And I look back and like, that was stupid as hell because I completely violated everyone else's expectations that was sitting right around me. That was like expecting me to be there. And I look back at that and like, you never have that opportunity again. And not to jump too far into books, but there's like a bunch of Japanese philosophy on like wabi sabi, like ikigai, and it's all about like this moment is you're never going to get it back. right?
Yeah.
Even if you try to recreate it, that one is still gone. And
Yeah.
I think about that a lot now.
I think you're right. And it's really easy. It is easy for me to kind of like look back and kind of just be like, oh God, why did I waste that time? Instead of now what I try to do is just say, I'm recognizing it now and I still have, God willing, all this time in front of me. So how can I kind of like learn from that and make the most of it? And again, just chill out a little. Maybe I need to chill out a little bit. That's kind of what I'm saying. I just need to smell the roses.
I like it.
Smidge.
So we touched books really quickly, but what media are you
Yes.
listening to besides the stuff you
Oh,
create? So what books, podcasts,
yes. Oh my gosh.
movies, all that? Hit us with it.
This is a challenge. Lauren knows we are big media consumers. Lauren and
Mhm.
I. We talk about this all the
Mhm.
time. We're audiophiles. We watch too much. We have background shows. It's bad. Okay, I know Lauren and or I don't know if she's done with this yet, but we just finished The 90s by Chuck Klosterman, which was great.
It's a
I
great
really
book.
enjoyed that. It was a cool retrospective. I'm in the middle of Man's Search for Meaning, which is very good.
Great book.
I'm really enjoying that so far. That's a nice one to kind of like listen to in the morning when I need a break from politics or current events. That is a nice thing to recenter me. Big into podcasts. So I have some that I listen to. Lauren knows I'm always kind of like bouncing around between the podcasts. I would say there are some that I don't miss. I love Mike Rowe's podcast. He reminds me a lot of my dad. And he's just like a very like, who doesn't love Mike Rowe's voice? He's very calming and I enjoy his perspective. And I also always listen to my buddy Mike Doyle's podcast. This Was the Scene, because it really takes me back to this pop punk music era that I love so much, was just like the late 90s, early 2000s. And so that podcast really digs into that. And it's such a nice break from current events and the news. And so I really like kind of going back to those times where I wasn't so obsessed with those things.
Got
So
it.
yeah. But yes, as far as my music, I'm always kind of stuck in that late 90s to early 2000s pop punk scene. So if you see me driving down the road, that is 100% what I'm listening to all of the time. My music taste is stuck right there. I don't even know what came after that, or don't care.
It's probably for the best, honestly. It hasn't gotten
Yeah.
much better.
Yes.
I think it peaked.
Yeah.
All
If anyone
downhill
wants to do
after
a
like
podcast
2000.
deep dive on a Newfound Glory, I'm here for that. Saves the day. Let's go. I'm ready.
You should be on Mike Doyle's podcast then.
I know. No, I'm not cool enough. He gets like actual musicians, not just fans. Sad.
I did my best. Sorry, Andrea.
What do you guys recommend to me? How about that? I'm always looking for
So-
recommendations.
counterpoint.
There's a book that I gift probably more than any other book these days, usually on audiobook, sometimes digitally, but I ended up getting a stack of paper copies of it. It's obviously very, very thin.
I love it.
But it's,
That's my style.
Epictetus's The Manual, A Philosopher's Guide
fantastic.
to Life. It's very, very good. So when you think of like Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus, and it's in little
Nice.
snippets, it's kind of like if that dude had a Twitter account, and these are all like little advice, life aphorism tweets kind of thing. It's really good. I really enjoy it.
You have my address, so I'll be awaiting my copy.
Do you like paper copies of books? Is that kind of your
Yes.
thing, or
I love a book. I do both. I like audiobooks, but when I can sit down and read a book, it's like a luxury.
in audiobook format, when you put this at about 2x pretty fast, you can rip through it in about 20 minutes. Right? If you just really wanted to zip through it and get the information. But no, it's really thin. You can sit down for about an hour, really like take in a lot of it, highlight the good sections, and it's really good. One of my favorites.
Send it over. I was going to say at the start of this podcast, if anyone was listening at 2x, to go ahead and bump that down. Like you might need to slow it down to 0.5 because Lauren and I can really let loose. We sound like chipmunks.
I know. We
It's
get
not
really
good.
fast there.
Mhm.
I like to... Derek had the book ready. I don't have books ready. But from a podcast perspective,
All the props.
I know. Much better than me. But sometimes I also like to sort of check out from politics on occasion. And I'm not a big murder mystery person, but there's this one called Rotten Mangoes, which has been very interesting to me. And she does a very... she highlights and does like a very deep dive on like certain like prolific murderers and serial killers. And it's like actually kind of funny, which is, maybe sick and twisted, but I think that's really fascinating. So I would say I would give that one a try.
I'm
Yeah, and
scared.
then
I feel like there's some obsession with people knowing about murderers, and I'm not sure. It's interesting.
I know. I
I
think
don't want to listen to that walking around the block by myself,
I
checking
think
behind my
because
back
it's
all
like
the time.
well, I think it's because you're removed from the murder. Like you're intrigued by it
Mm.
because it's terrifying and you can learn about it and be removed from it without actually being in danger. You know, I think there's something there. And I'm currently watching The Staircase on HBO Max,
Yes,
which is about another murder, which is
another murder,
now that I'm putting
local to
that
North
Wait,
Carolina.
together.
wait, is that the local one in Durham?
The Scott
Yes.
Peterson
Yeah,
one.
Yeah.
where allegedly, I guess he's convicted, so you can say his wife got pushed down the
Mike Peterson.
stairs allegedly.
Scott
Yes, he
Peterson
got
is
pushed.
somebody else. I think it's Michael
Oh, okay. I'm
Peterson.
sorry. Different murder. Michael
That's a different
Peterson.
murderer.
This
This is
podcast.
taking
We're
such a turn.
professionals.
This, you know what this feels like right now, and I'm so sorry because I know that I've totally derailed this, but this feels like a creative brainstorming meeting. Whereas we all get together and we say, "Let's talk about this project," and then before you know it, we're not talking about that, but we're having fun, we're talking about cool ideas, and eventually that idea will come to fruition. That's what's happening right now with this podcast.
I feel
This
like
is
this is
the
a taste. This is a taste of what you would get with Repost.
correct. This is
There's
behind the
another
scenes
good
look.
book that reminds me
Tell
of the
me.
same conversation. It's called Thinker Toys. And the big overlying concept is like when you're a child, everything's kind of fluid. But over
Mm.
time, you start classifying things. Machine learning models work this way too. But a baby will say food, not food. That's the first thing they start classifying. And it's like mom, not mom. And then they start like classifying things into more granular buckets. But if you think of that big pool of fluid, and then it gets frozen into these little ice cube trays, over time, you start classifying things in such a way that it's hard to push them back together or push the unrelated things back together. And the creative process requires that, right?
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
all about how you take that ice cube tray, crack it, take 3 different cubes, melt them together, even if they shouldn't belong together, and use that as a starting point. And it's a pretty fascinating book. It's a little
Oh,
thicker
that
than
sounds
this book,
great.
but it's good.
No, that's cool. And I think that kind of like hits on maybe what, like, one of the reasons I like kind of like working in this field so much is that you don't really ever kind of get boring, and you kind of don't have to grow up. You kind of get to think like a kid all the time, right? Like you get to kind of throw all those ideas against the wall and like see what sticks. And that's kind of what's fun. When there are days where I'm like, God, I don't want to work, or I don't want to work on that thing, it's always cool to kind of like take a step back and be like, I get to make videos. I get to write wacky scripts about talking light bulbs. Like, what am I saying? Why wouldn't I want to do that? And, that's the great part about kind of working in this field and also working for myself too.
I think
love it.
7-year-old you would be very proud of current you.
Oh my gosh, I hope so. That's one of the nicest things anyone's ever said. Thank you.
Wow, Derek, you somehow eclipsed me with one line.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually had that. I had that written down. I was just waiting to pull it out at the right moment.
No, it is really cool because I wonder if, like, when I was 7, if you had asked me what I'd be doing, I just would never have guessed this. But it feels so good to just kind of be somewhere where I don't dread going to work every single day. I love it, and get to create some fun stuff and meet some cool people along the way. I can't ask for more than that when you kind of just or break it down to the most simplest form. That's it's great.
Well, Andrea, this conversation took twists. It took turns. We talked over each other the entire time. I can't wait for us to edit this, but it was great having you on. I loved, being able to chat with you because I'd be doing it anyway, but then we just threw a camera on and recorded it. So thanks for joining. And we'll put all the information. If somebody wants to find you, where should they go?
Thank you. Yes, we are 3 posts across everything. So check us out on our website, 3post.com. That is the number 3 spelled out, and then post, like a fence post.com. I say that all the time because people constantly mess it up, including Wayfair customers, which is a whole nother story for a different podcast that we do not have time to get into today. But we are not the company 3 posts. We are 3 post, no plural. Okay, you guys, 3post.com. Check us out on Instagram. We don't post on there enough, but maybe one day. 3 posts.
When you have time, right?
Yeah.
Well, Andrea, this has been a lot of fun. I'm sure we'll talk to you at some point really soon, probably the 2 of you even sooner. But have a great day, and thanks again for being on the podcast.